Hey, welcome to today's video. My name is Jessie if you do not already know me. Today we are going to be doing the book recommendations tag. This was created by Steph bohrer over a year ago, I believe, and I haven't done it. I really don't do book recommendation videos on my channel, and I don't know why. That's crazy. So I really want to do one now just to give people kind of one video that gives my book taste or to show people what books that I have loved in the past. I think there are about like 15 questions or prompts. First one is a book you tell people is your favorite. I have done this multiple times. Everybody's like, oh, what's your favorite book? And I always say The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I read this when I was in high school, and I don't know, this book just spoke to me a lot. It's super popular, so I feel like a lot of people know what this book is about, but it's set in 1939 in Nazi Germany. We're following a very young character named Liesel. She ends up finding a book by her brother's grave, and she creates this love for books. Her father, who is fostering her, teaches her to read, and she just keeps growing this love for books and reading, and she continues to steal books any chance that she can get. Not a very good thing, but that's just basically the story. The second I started reading this, I fell in love with it. It is narrated by death, and I think that's such an interesting concept. I've said this before, I love when books have death as a character or when death plays a huge role in the book. I just think it's so interesting, and this one was written so well. I think there's a lot of beautiful writing in here. Definitely something that could bother a lot of people, I think, but I just truly connect with it, and I love the way things were written. I love how it was all formed, and I just think this book is amazing. I would really like to reread this. Like I said, I read it when I was in high school, and it's been quite a while because I have to make sure I still like it. I'm afraid that I'm gonna reread it and I'm gonna hate it. Next, we have a book that is our guilty pleasure. Now, mine is The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. I loved this book so much. I can't even tell you how much I was like giggling, kicking my feet, just, oh my gosh, I felt so many emotions with these two and their romance. And I feel like maybe it's not a good book. I don't know. I read this, I rated it 5 stars, completely in love with it. There are scenes that are cringy, unrealistic. It's like, why are these adult characters doing this? But you know what? I loved it, hence why it's my guilty pleasure book. I love Ellie Hazelwood. She's an auto-buy author for me. She's one of my favorite authors, if not my favorite author. I just enjoy every book that I read by her. I'm so excited for every single book that she puts out in the future. But this one specifically has a special place in my heart. It's my favorite Ellie Hazelwood book. And yeah, Adam and Olive are just, I just love them. Like, there's literally, there's a scene where she has to sit on his lap because there's no other seats in the place that they're in. Tell me why I love that. That wouldn't happen with a professor and a student. Leave me alone. Moving on. The next one is the book that you hated but everybody else loved. I'm scared to talk about this. This one is Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I don't want to say too much about this because I don't really have any good positive opinions on this book, but I cannot even describe how much I don't understand how this book gets hype. Like, sometimes you read a book and you don't like it, but you can understand why people love it. I didn't get that with this one, and I don't know if I missed something, but the whole way through I don't know, I couldn't do it, and I think it was just too immature. The characters were college students, they were going into college, some of them were a little older, and the dialogue between them was just so like middle school almost. I don't even want to say it because I'll cringe myself out. I just didn't see how these characters were constantly acting like that. They were constantly like drinking and partying, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that mixed with the dialogue that they were using just made them seem like those insufferable teenage characters. Unfortunately, I did not like this one. I know a lot of people love this book. I just cannot. I can't do it. Next is a book that I read the fastest. This is the first book I believe that I read in one single sitting. This is Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett. There is romance in here. It's just like a YA fiction romance. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I remember when I picked up this book, I had my papasan chair in my bedroom. I set my little butt down in that chair. I picked up this book and I literally did not take my eyes off this book, I don't think. I just was so captured into this story. So this is about Bailey, and she is going to California to live with her father. They don't really have the best relationship, so she's kind of going over there and feeling a little lonely. She doesn't have friends over there, and she has kind of this online persona. She was talking to this person online. They have their friendship, but they were going by different names online, so they don't know who each other is in real life. They were just saying their like pen names, I guess. So she goes to California and she gets this new job at a museum, and there's this other guy there who is her co-worker, and he's kind of like, they just get off on the wrong foot. What's the saying? I'm just gonna say they get off on the wrong foot. Hopefully that's the correct way to say that saying. Over time, they grow their friendship with each other, and then there's always this underlying thing where she's talking to this online person that she's friends with and kind of describing certain things but not giving full details about what is happening in her life currently. I just really liked the connection that our two main characters formed in this book. I think the scenes were fun. It was one of those romances where you have Bailey, obviously she doesn't have any really new friends in this new city that she's living in. I just really liked the fact that the romance in here was focused solely on them, and they didn't really have like a friend group or anybody to come in and interfere. You're really just focused on the two of them. I just really think it's sweet. In the end, like, you know what's gonna happen throughout this book. It is predictable because of the way that it's set up and everything, but I don't think this book is meant to not be predictable or for you to not know the end and the outcome. If you have not read this or any of Jen Bennett's books, I do recommend them if you like YA. Since summertime is fast approaching, I feel like this one would be a good summer read, so if you want to pick up any of her books, I suggest Alex Approximately, and I suggest to do it pretty soon. Okay, a book that deserves more hype. Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I have a reading vlog on this book and the second book in this duology. It's in my blind date with the book video. I could not be more thankful that I picked up the blind date book that I picked up. There was a whole little fiasco. I picked up the blind date. It said like dragons, Asian author, and I forget what else, but I saw dragons and I'm like, okay, I'm there. I opened it, found out that it was the second book in this duology. This one is the first one. So I had to buy this one. I ordered it off of Amazon so it could get here like in 2 days so I could film that video. This might be my favorite read of the year, I will say. I just enjoyed my time with this so much in the journey it took me on. There's so much adventure in this book. You don't really get too much depth with the characters, but there's just so much happening that things keep popping up and you're just so gripped the whole entire time. We deal with Shiori. She has this magic, but magic is frowned upon in her kingdom. She's a princess. She has a stepmother who she does not have a good relationship with at all. They cannot form a connection with each other, and she thinks that her stepmother is keeping this sort of secret, so she's trying to figure out what that is as we go through the book. Her and her brothers actually get cursed. Her brothers get turned into cranes and she ends up with a bowl on her head and nobody knows that she is a princess anymore. She goes on her journey and travels trying to break this curse for her and her brothers, meets new people, meets new characters, gets sucked into so many different situations, and I just love it. I cannot recommend this more. I want to reread this again already, and it's only, I read it in February so it hasn't been long, but I just want to be in this book all the time. Please, please, please hype this book up. Alright, next we have a book that is becoming a movie slash TV show. I'm not somebody who watches really any shows or movies, so this one was a little hard for me. I didn't really know any that I had, but there is one, and that is the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy by Holly Jackson. I don't know if all three of these books are becoming a show. I know the first one is. I don't know how many seasons there's going to be or if it's going to follow all three storylines. These are super fun. They get better as they go along, and I really liked how this whole trilogy concluded. YA mystery. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this by now too, but we deal with our main character Pip. She's going back to a murder of two people that went to her school. The cops just never looked into it enough, and she's like, I know I can figure this out. Like, there has to be something. She's kind of doing a school project at the time, which leads her into this investigation. Her and her friend just go through all this craziness and this journey of finding out the mystery. I will say this doesn't have like too much of a surprise at the end. Like, I didn't think the whole outcome was completely insane, but they're good reads. They're good fast-paced reads, and I just think you should read all of them to get to the last book because that one was my favorite. If the show comes out and it's good, let me know. Maybe I'll give it a shot. I'm very out of the loop with that whole side of media. And then we have a book that I reread the most. I think I've only reread this book 2 times. I'm not someone who rereads books. I really want to start doing that. I just never thought that it would be something to do because I have so many books that I need to get to. For some reason, it just makes me nervous thinking of rereading a book. Like, I don't want to love one and then reread it and end up hating it. I am scared to read books more than once, but the one that I definitely did was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This is a classic. If you don't know what this book is yet, you've been living under a rock. It kind of matches me. Hey. That's cool. I read this in 8th grade, I believe, for school, and I reread it maybe late high school. I have no idea. But I read it in school and I didn't have my own copy, but I really loved it when I read it. I did read it again once I bought the book because I just wanted to get back into this and kind of get more of an understanding as I was older. I would like to reread this book again. It's super short. I think it's less than 200 pages. So if you have not read this yet, if you want to read a classic, go for this one. I think it's really good. Now we have a book from a genre that I don't typically read. I know I just suggested the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, which is a mystery, but I don't normally read mysteries. I kind of have felt like I did like mysteries, and I thought I was picking up more than I have, but when looking at my shelves on my mysteries, there's like this much. I really don't have any at all. But I have read Harlan Coben before. I read these back in high school too, so forgive me for not really remembering too much about these books. I read them forever ago. I just know that I like them. They haven't been recent reads for me, so it's very hard to go back and kind of get all the details and remember the feelings that I had when I read them. This one is Fool Me Once. I did give this one 5 stars. This is about a former pilot in the war. Her name is Maya, and she has a child and she has a nanny cam, and she sees like really sketchy things on the nanny cam. And the whole book is centered around her seeing her dead husband on the nanny cam playing with her daughter. So then she's like, okay, I thought he was gone. How is he here playing with my daughter? Like, this is super not okay. She just goes on to figure out what the heck is going on? And then also Tell No One, same author, Harlan Coben. This one's about a guy, I think he like goes to this house. See, I don't even remember. I rated it 5 stars. I'm like, I love this book and I have no idea what it was about. But this one was also a really good one. I think I may have liked this one better because when I think of Harlan Coben, this is the first book that comes to mind. Like, I don't really think of Fool Me Once, but that's the one that I remember more of. I don't know. Read both. They're quick reads, they're mysteries. Go for it. Test them out, see if you like them. Moving on, we have a book that deserves, I'm like squinting, I literally have my contacts in. A book that deserves all the hype it gets. I have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I read this last month. Was it that soon? It feels like forever ago. I will just start off by saying, if you are reading this for a fantasy and a whole bunch of like deep fantasy elements, I don't think you would like this book. But if you just want a good romance or romantasy that is super heavy on the romance, this one's for you. It'll be right up your alley. You have to like slow burn. You have to like a lot of tension. Oh my god, it's so good. I love the romance in this so much. It's one of my favorites. The characters are some of my favorites. I have so many tabs in here. I love Lauren Roberts' writing. The fact that this is her first book is insane, and I'm so excited to continue this series. I cannot wait for the next book to come out. And I just read Powerful, which is the novella in this series. That was absolutely amazing. I think her writing improved in that one, and I am just so excited to read any book that she writes. I hope she continues to write books because I truly do love this one so much. But this is a fantasy. This is about elites and ordinaries. Elites have power, ordinaries do not have powers, and the ordinaries are not wanted by the kingdom. The kingdom is trying to get rid of them, and our main character Peyton is an ordinary. She has to pretend that she has powers, and it's just so fun. It'll pull on your emotions, really. It'll dig up all the emotions in you, but it's worth it, and oh my god. The next prompt slash question is the one that I had the most trouble with. It's literally just a book that you would recommend if someone asked for a recommendation. And for some reason, this was the hardest one. Like, I'm giving all these recommendations, but they're more specific. And this one, I don't know, because a lot of people have different book tastes. So if someone wants a fantasy, I would recommend something different than if someone just wants a romance. So I picked out 2 for this. The one I just finished, it's Abby Jimenez, Just for the Summer. I think that this one is a good one if you're leaning more towards a romance, but you still don't want to dive too deep into romance, or just if you are willing to read a story about people who is kind of focused more on real life. Abby Jimenez has really good romances because there is the romance, but there's also like a huge underlying story that goes into these books. That way you're not too bored with the romance, you're not getting too much of that or like cringiness or anything, but you're also getting a story that is keeping you gripped throughout the whole time reading. I just think she does that really well, so I would recommend pretty much any of her books. I haven't read them all, but I think that I'm probably going to, just because I read this one and I loved it so much. This is technically the 3rd book, so it's Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and then Just for the Summer. You can read it as a standalone. If you are willing to read 3 books or 2 books before you get to this one, definitely pick up Part of Your World and then Yours Truly, and then read this one, but I think this one's the best. And then another one is also a book by Marcus Zusak. This is I Am the Messenger. I actually started this book. This was another one that I read in high school, but I started it. I DNF'd it. I didn't really like it at all. I didn't get too far into it. I think maybe 50 pages, not even. My friend was reading it in one of his classes and he was like, you have to pick up that book, like you have to reread it, it's so good. And so I did, and I ended up absolutely loving it. I don't know what happened the first time, I don't know where my head was, but we just disconnected, and then the second time I was all for it. This is just a contemporary fiction novel. It is about our main character Ed. He's kind of like a lonely person, just lives his life in routine, doesn't really have anything going for him, just feeling very mellow, kind of stuck, but he's just, you know, he's not living life to the fullest. And then one day he stops a bank robbery, and then he starts getting like messages, and he turns out to be a messenger. I don't want to give too much because I think this is a book that if you go into it and find out things along the way, it's very interesting, but it is very good, a fun journey that it takes you on. And it definitely is a book that makes you think too about just life itself. If you don't want romance, if you don't want fantasy, you just want a simple contemporary novel, this one is a good one. Then we have a book with my favorite characters. This was really hard to pick because, like I said, I forget a lot of what I read after I read the books. Obviously, the books that I rate 5 stars, I like the characters. But this one was also a recent read for me. This was Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I just heavily related to our characters in this book. They're kind of standoffish. This is a romance, so we're dealing with the both of them. The girl main character, she has like a kind of specific take on relationships. Oliver, can we not? and I'm definitely not someone that views dating and relationships in the normal type of way, I think. So I really connected with this character, and this was the first time I really truly felt connected with someone's stance on that stuff. Our main character is a wedding planner, and then our guy main character is a florist, so they end up working together. It's kind of a second chance romance, and they rekindle their relationship. The first time it ended on a very bad note. You go the whole book trying to figure out why it ended, or you're just waiting to get to that point to get that information. This was also, I believe, this author's debut novel. She has another one coming out in July. I want it so bad because I love this one so much. I gave it a 5 stars. And then we have a book that get off my books, bro. A book that I wish I could live in, or just a world I wish I could live in. This is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is a YA, I almost said a Wi-Fi, a YA sci-fi novel. This is a trilogy, so there's Renegades, Arch Enemies, and Supernova. We have the Renegades, who are good, and the Anarchists, who are kind of known as the villains or the bad people of this world. Our main character is actually a part of the Anarchist, so she's dealing with that. Everybody in this book has their own unique power or quirk, and our main character actually works as a spy in the Renegades to get all of their information, but then obviously she grows connections with the Renegades. She kind of is wondering if she's on the right side. Just lay down, okay? And it's just really good. Very action-packed, adventurous, and I love the characters. I think it's very fun. I would love to have like a little superpower. It reminds me of My Hero Academia, if you have seen that anime, or if you have heard of it at least. Everybody has their own little superpower, and I think it's great. I think if you haven't read sci-fi either, that'll be a really good place to start. YA is always a good place to start if you're looking to dive into new genres. I know a lot of people are hesitant about getting into fantasy or sci-fi, but definitely start out with YA and work your way up to adult fantasy and sci-fi, because they're more laid back, fast-paced. Don't go too in-depth, but they're still super fun to read. Okay, and then we have a book that you thought you would hate but ended up loving. This is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is a literary fiction novel. It's kind of Shakespearean. It's heavily based on Shakespeare, hence why I didn't think I would like it, or I just thought it would be really rough for me to get through, but I ended up loving this book. I think it was written so well. It ended in such a perfect way, and I just cannot say anything bad about this book. We're dealing with a group of friends that are in this college. They do a whole bunch of Shakespearean plays. That is their thing. That's what they love to do. One of the group members actually ends up getting murdered. Another member, Oliver, hey, Oliver, that's my cat's name. Oliver gets released from jail. He's been in there for a decade, and everybody's trying to just figure out what happened. We're getting the truth. It follows like the current timeline, and then it goes back throughout the story of what had happened, and then you're finding out the truth along the way. If you don't like Shakespeare, I still recommend this because I loved it. It's just so good. Good writing in here. Just great book. Great book. I feel like I'm very vague with my descriptions, but I don't want to give too much because I think reading books without too much information is the best journey. And now we have a book that made me cry. This is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the third book in the Poppy War trilogy. I have the other 2 books here. Recommend this whole trilogy. It's fantastic. This is another book or trilogy series that I thought that I wasn't gonna like. I thought it was gonna be rough for me to read all these books. There's a lot of words in here. It's a high fantasy. That's just not something that I was too familiar with yet, so I was really nervous going into this series. But oh my god, these books are so good, well written, and I just think I don't know, it's crazy that I love this series so much. But this one specifically made me cry. The ending, oh my god. I was in so many tears, and I kept thinking about the ending after it happened, and I kept bursting into tears because it's just, it hits you so much. This is about our main character, Rin. In the first book, she goes to this school called Synagard. She's from like a poor family. She is a foster child, and this family that she is with just does not care for her at all. She ends up studying as hard as she possibly can to get into this high-ranked academy so she can get into it for free and just study there, leave her life that she is in right now. So the first book, you're following her getting into that academy, how she is training there, how she's finding out who she really is, and then it just goes into the wars beyond that. Over time, you get so connected with the story and what is happening. Even if you don't form deep connections with the characters, it's still just so emotional. I will say that our main character in this one, I never really got connected. You're going back and forth with loving her, kind of hating her, not agreeing with her, and you go through just all these wavelengths of emotions and frustration with the characters. I just love this trilogy so much, but the ending of this really, really hit me. I think anytime I think about this ending, I'll cry. Lastly, we have a book that you wish you could read for the first time. I saved this book for last because it is my favorite. This book holds the specialist place in my heart. Oh, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I love this book so much. This is Kid by Jessie Hall. I read this last August, and everything in this book, like, I will say this is more of a dark romance, and I'm not too fond of that. The subjects that this book touched on really, really, really meant a lot to me. It deals a lot with mental health. There are a lot of triggers in this book. There are so many heavy topics, so if you want to get into this, just look up the trigger warnings. As you can see, I I have a ridiculous amount of tabs in this book. The writing, beautiful. This was the book that I've just connected with the most in my entire life. We're following our main character Kid, and then we have our girl main character Joanna. Joanna deals a lot with mental issues, and she's dealing with stuff that happened in her past. She's kind of all over the place. She doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know what to do with her life. And then you have Kid, who is just immediately like entranced by Jo the second he sees her. And I normally don't like insta love type things either, but I really truly feel like these characters are soulmates. They were written to be soulmates. Like those things were like, oh, I'll find you in every lifetime. It's these characters. So the whole like instant attraction thing made so much sense with this because they were meant to find each other. Kid deals a lot with his past, and he uses a lot of drugs. There's just a lot of topics in here that get touched on really well. These characters both have super strong things that they are trying to get past and work to be a better person, and they have that struggle, so they're trying to let each other in, but they're both like, I have too much baggage with me that I don't feel like I can let somebody in that well. They work through it so well, and I just cannot express how much I adore this book. I just truly give my heart to this book. Thank you, Jessie Hall, for writing this. This is the best thing in existence. So that is that. Those are all of my recommendations. I feel like if I film this video a year from now, it'll change. If I filmed this video last year, it would have completely been different than what I filmed today. I'm kind of glad I waited though, because I definitely feel like I'm coming in more to my book taste and getting to know that better. I'm excited to just continue my journey with reading, finding out what genres I like the best, what subjects of books that I like to read. Maybe a couple years from now, I will come back and do this video again or do another recommendations tag and see how much my book taste has changed. But if you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. Or if you haven't, let me know what books that you would like to read after watching this video. And that is it. So I will see you guys in my next video, whatever that may be. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me while I talk about books that I really love. I hope you have a great day, great night, and I will see you guys later. Bye.